Here we are for this adventure at Llano del Rio colony, the former socialist utopian experiment outside of Los Angeles in the desert.
California has a long and storied history as a place of reinvention, and so it is not surprising that its residents responded to the industrial age and its associated problems of economic exploitation and mass poverty by spawning the largest number of utopian colonies in the country. Here along Highway 138 east of Palmdale in the Antelope Valley of Los Angeles County are the ruins of Llano del Rio. The colony was the brainchild of this man, Job Harriman. Harriman was a labor lawyer and a socialist politician who moved to California from Indiana in 1886. Harriman's support of the nascent labor movement and his legal representation of high-profile leftists quickly brought him notoriety and to the attention of Harrison Gray Otis, the vehemently anti-labor owner of the Los Angeles Times newspaper. Otis was unrelenting in his efforts to crush the early labor movement, and he even worked behind the scenes to help pass ordinances that restricted the rights of assembly and protest. It is widely believed that Otis's hostility towards the labor movement inspired the 1910 bombing of the Los Angeles Times that killed 21 people. Harriman ran further afoul of Otis when he and his colleague Clarence Darrow took up the defense of James and John McNamara. The McNamara brothers were labor activists accused of the bombing of the Los Angeles Times. Otis used his paper as a means to publicly lambaste Harriman, and he worked to crush Harriman's 1911 campaign for mayor of Los Angeles on the socialist ticket. Harriman fell just 800 votes shy of the majority, and so he was forced into a runoff for mayor. Just before the runoff, it is alleged that Otis helped to secretly negotiate a plea bargain with Clarence Darrow that sent the McNamara brothers to prison. While Harriman knew nothing of this plea deal, his labor activist supporters assumed that he did, and it is widely believed that this cost Harriman the election in 1911. The mayoral race wasn't Harriman's first political campaign. He previously ran on the socialist ticket for other elected positions, and he even ran as vice president to Eugene Debs in 1900. Harriman ran for mayor of Los Angeles again in 1913, but it was after his 1911 loss that he realized that change from within the system wasn't going to happen, and he began to dream of Llano del Rio. Harriman recalled, "It became apparent to me that a people would never abandon their means of livelihood, good or bad, capitalistic or otherwise, until other methods were developed which would promise advantages at least as good as those by which they were living." Harriman theorized that if a functioning socialist community existed within the larger society of capitalism, the larger society would gradually convert to socialism. He believed that Llano del Rio could be that socialist community. In 1913, Harriman reached out to several prominent Southern California friends for financial support, and he was able to purchase a 10,000-acre site that had previously been partially developed by a colony of temperance advocates. A new 9-member board of directors was appointed, and the recruitment of members and the corresponding sale of stock began in the fall of 1913. Llano del Rio was formally launched as a socialist experiment in sustainable farming and communal living on May 1, 1914. The colony was promoted in the Western Comrade, a socialist newspaper eventually printed on site at Llano del Rio. There was an application process for membership in the colony. Llano del Rio sought industrious and idealistic members. Questions on the application asked not only about skills prospective members possessed, but also tested applicants' dedication to socialism. Each applicant also needed 3 references, ideally written by a local union president or board member. Eventually, the colony switched from its rigorous screening process and adopted a more open approach in order to facilitate growth. Ironically, Llano del Rio turned to capitalist techniques to form and fund their socialist colony. To become a member, individuals were required to invest in the colony through a joint stock venture. Colonists had to purchase 2,000 stock shares priced at $1 per share. Colonists were allowed to buy up to 3/4 of the required 2,000 stock shares on credit. This meant that in order to join, prospective members needed $500 for a down payment on shares, which was a sizable amount of money in this time period. Today, that would be a roughly $12,000 deposit. For their labor, colonists were paid $4 per day, with $1 of those wages going towards the payment of stock shares purchased on credit. The remaining $3 went towards daily expenses such as food and shelter. All unused funds were credited to the colonist's account and payable only when Llano del Rio realized surpluses. Unfortunately for the colonists, surpluses were never realized. While Llano had a board of directors headed by Harriman to provide leadership, the day-to-day management was left to a General Assembly. This General Assembly model proved ineffective as the colony increased in size. The colony grew between late 1914 and early 1917 to be nearly 900 people living in 60 communities, each with its own administration and agenda. This created a fractious system. This booming pace also stressed resources. Building could simply not keep pace with the growth, and many new members were unprepared for the rough surroundings. Many colonists had to live in tents as the population outpaced funds to build their utopian city. The colonists used local granite boulders and lumber to construct their buildings. The colony took water from Big Rock Creek, a seasonal stream that flowed from the San Gabriel Mountains. They built small open irrigation aqueducts made of granite cobbles and cement to bring water to their lands. The remnants of the built features are still visible at the site today. This water and irrigation system helped to grow fields of alfalfa, corn, fruit orchards, and vegetables. By their first year, colonists grew 75% of their own food, and by 1916, the colonists supplied 90% of their own food. This food, unfortunately, was not always palatable. For example, carrots were the only vegetable available for several weeks during one notable period. In addition to farming, there were many employment opportunities at Llano del Rio. There was a dairy, sawmill, quarry, lime kiln, soap factory, tannery, machine shop, printing press, laundry, barber shop, and lots of other trades available to provide employment. There was even a hotel, and Llano del Rio served as a site for socialist tourism. Despite some of the stresses of rapid growth, social life at Llano del Rio was rich. There were May Day celebrations, a dramatic club called the Old Live Wires, a choral group, an orchestra, and book clubs. Even the farmers and ranchers in the Palmdale area attended the evening dances hosted at Llano del Rio. Llano del Rio was also an experiment in gender equality. Women and men earned the same $4 per day wage, and they could choose any job they pleased. In order to limit domestic labor, houses were designed without kitchens and had built-in furniture. Children were raised in communal daycare, and the colony hosted the largest Montessori school in California. The aim was to encourage women to spend more time in the public sphere. Llano's designer and architect Alice Constance Austin drew up elaborate plans inspired by feminism and Britain's Garden City movement. Breaking with the traditional urban grid system, Austin designed Llano's streets in a circular shape. Her plan consisted of cooperative housing for 10,000 people surrounded by large parks and gardens with a city center free of congestion. While the plans were designed to promote equality, not everything at Llano del Rio was idyllic. You may have noticed from the photographs that all of the residents seemed to be white. This is because only Caucasians were admitted to Llano del Rio. An article in the Western Comrade attempted to defend this admittance discrimination, explaining, "We have had applications from Negroes, Hindus, Mongolians, and Malays. The rejections of these applications are not due to race prejudice, but because it is not deemed expedient to mix races in these communities." The colony also suffered from a mix of personalities. The General Assembly of some 60 different individual committees created organizational problems and fostered infighting. A minority of residents became dissatisfied with governance and demanded that decisions affecting the colony be made by popular vote rather than through the General Assembly. World War I also impacted the colony, drawing manpower away from the settlement. Most significantly, the colony failed to effectively harness the area's limited water supply, and they were mired down in water rights disputes. And the Los Angeles Times continued to attack the settlement's legitimacy, which helped to create local tensions for the colony and to deter new recruits. Without reliable water, Llano del Rio could not sustain itself. The community decided it would relocate in 1918. They purchased 20,000 acres in rural Louisiana, and around 100 colonists and all the usable materials were packed up and moved to New Llano in Stables, Louisiana. The colony thrived well into the 1930s, when the economics of the Great Depression finally resulted in its abandonment in 1938. Like most communal efforts, Llano del Rio was short-lived. While the buildings left behind continued to decay, Llano del Rio is remembered today as one of the most important non-religious utopian experiments in Western American history.